You're watching Swipe. Coming up on this week's show, the smart buttons that could make life easier for people with sight problems. South London to Silicon Valley. I meet the British tech prodigy making his mark with this.
Open fire!
And prepare for an invasion in our games preview. Hello and welcome to Swipe. We love it when we get to talk about tech making life easier. And this week we've been finding out about some Bluetooth buttons designed for visually impaired people to help them around the house. Here's Will to explain.
5-year-old Lennie lost his sight when he was just 10 months old after a tumour damaged his optic nerves. And one of the things he finds difficult is getting around his home. But these big buttons, called pips, have helped him to feel more confident.
Come in.
Once Lennie hears the beeps, he heads in that direction and presses the button. This turns the sound off and activates the next one in the sequence. The buttons are connected via Bluetooth and can be easily customised.
I had thought, oh, well, it's only a little beeping thing, it's not going to be that fascinating for him, but it's the level of control that he has. Actually, it doesn't matter what the stimulus is. It was just enough for him to say, oh, this is my game and I know what I'm doing and I can take control of the whole process.
The pips were originally created for people living with dementia to help them through their daily routines. So you might put one by the bed to wake you up, or another on a chest of drawers to remind you to get dressed. The code and instructions for how to build pips are now free to download, and the inventor's keen for people to get creative with it.
You've got to be pretty handy with a soldering iron, and you've got to know your way around writing a little bit of code. But we think that that should be accessible to a lot of students and a lot of research organisations, people who are really well placed to try and run trials with vulnerable people.
There are around 35,000 blind and partially sighted children and young people in the UK. So how much of an impact could something like this have on their lives?
It could be put in schools, it could help slightly older children than Lennie discover new routes within an environment. It has many, many different applications in understanding different rooms within a house or within a school.
At the moment, the pips are just prototypes, but if they get picked up by other researchers, life for people like Lennie could start to get easier.
You choose which one you press and it's going to start beeping.
Will Sargent, Sky News.
Stay with us. Still to come, I'll be sitting down with a Silicon Valley-based Londoner who's using tech to help us all get a good night's sleep. That's coming up after a roundup of some of this week's other tech news. The UK's tech scene has been reacting to that monumental news you won't have failed to notice, the EU referendum result. We know the effects won't be known for years, but initial fears within the startup community have been based around the size of the future talent pool and worries that investors might choose to put funds into other European startup hubs instead. The Google-owned robot builder Boston Dynamics has been working on a smaller version of one of its bots. The Spot Mini weighs 55 pounds, is all electric, and one of the company's quietest creations. It can run for about 90 minutes, enough time to get a good amount of housework done in that case. A smart cycle helmet that detects body movement has smashed its funding target on a crowdfunding site. ClassOn can detect vehicles in your blind spot, and it activates turn and brake signals based on what your body's doing. The team behind it were only looking for $30,000, but at the time of putting this week's Swipe together, they've already raced past the $60,000 mark. And while you're on your bike, maybe this project to make navigation easier could come in handy. It's a sat-nav in a bicycle bell that apparently finds the safest routes for you to take and remembers where you left your bike. The European Space Agency is helping to develop Bluebell. Its creators are raising money via crowdfunding to be able to manufacture their first batch. Stick around for our games preview. We journey into space to explore strange new worlds. But first, the term tech star gets bandied around quite a bit, doesn't it? We tend to think of people like Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. But what about the current crop of young, fresh Silicon Valley CEOs? Well, one of them dropped into London recently, where I grabbed him for a chat. Not many 20-something Londoners are running their own tech firms in Silicon Valley. James Proud is, though. The British entrepreneur moved to California in 2011, set up his second company just a year later when he was 20, and now leads a team of 50 people with more than £28 million in funding. But if you'd known him as a kid, you might have expected this kind of success. Is it true that you taught yourself to code at the age of 9?
It sounds a little sad, but yes. I loved the internet, and then I discovered that you could actually basically build websites for yourself, and so that kept me busy for quite a few years.
So then how did you go from South London to Silicon Valley?
I started basically like building websites for people when I was 12. My mum thought I was a drug dealer. I tried to explain that drug dealers don't... Well,
because of the money you were making.
I was suddenly getting a little bit of money. It was like, where's this coming from? And I was like, well, there's these checks and they're coming from America. And she's like, look, I don't want to know. Don't tell me about it.
James chose not to go to university when he got a tempting offer to go elsewhere.
She had the opportunity to move to the Valley. I was basically given the money to go out there by a guy called Peter Thiel, who was one of the founders of PayPal, the first investor in Facebook. Yeah, so that was a pretty easy decision. Do what I'm doing now, but in the best place in the world to do it. I think for my parents, it was like, well, he's getting paid to do something better than sit in his bedroom doing what he's doing now. So for them, it was even the less riskier option.
And now you're the CEO of Hello, the company behind Sense, which is here. Tell us about Sense.
So Sense it's a sleep device for helping you to fall asleep. Inside here is basically a sound machine. So it can play sounds like white noise, rainfall, calming meditative sounds. It also tracks your sleep, but not just your sleep, but all of the environmental conditions such as light, sound, temperature, humidity.
Sleep trackers are becoming more common. Mm-hmm. Does it concern you that the market is becoming overcrowded?
What we found is a lot of people that start tracking their sleep through something on their wrist or their phone, a lot of the times they stop doing that and actually switch over to Sense.
How would you respond to people who think that sleep trackers and sleep devices are just a bit gimmicky?
When you actually look at the science behind it, everything that happens throughout our day is impacted by our night, whether it's mental health, whether it's weight, all of these things, poor sleep negatively affects.
What do you think the biggest difference is between here in the UK and the US when it comes to nurturing tech talent and startups with big ideas?
You go back for decades and there's been tech startups in the Valley. It's something that's beginning to shift here in the UK, and it's wonderful to see. Like, I could see now really starting a company in the UK, whereas a few years ago I think it would have been much, much harder.
So do you think you might come back then and start a new company in the UK?
Well, there's 50 people relying on me in San Francisco. I don't think they'll be too pleased if I said yes.
Such obligations. James, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you.
We've seen loads of new video game releases over the past few months, but now things are starting to slow down a little bit. It's just that time of year. So we thought we'd make the most of the opportunity to show you a few games due to be released soon. Here's Lucy.
I've seen things. A few things before.
No Man's Sky is a game that's got a lot of hype. It's very simple in its concept. You're an explorer in space, and you know, you've got your little vehicle, you've got your spaceship, you've got like a jetpack, and you've got like a scanning tool. Usually with video games, you know, like an artist will meticulously craft like planets and things to go in it, whereas No Man's Sky is quite unique in that everything's procedurally generated, so it's made by an algorithm. If you discover a planet, you can upload its coordinates to this thing called the Atlas, which is like this big online database that other players can look at, and you can give the coordinates to a friend and they can meet you on a planet. But it's coming out on August 10th on PS4 and PC. World of Warcraft is an incredibly famous video game franchise. It's a MMORPG, so it's massively online multiplayer, and you have these RPG elements, so you can craft your character the way you kind of want it. But now there's a brand new expansion pack, so it's World of Warcraft Legion. And if you've been playing the game for a number of years, you'll probably have a max level character, which at the moment sits at about 100. And you can raise that level now to 110, so there'll be more quests, a new storyline.
Open fire!
There's a brand new area called the Broken Isles, and there's a brand new class, so there's the Demon Hunter class. People always make these stories, you know, oh, the subscriber numbers are diminishing. They are, but that game is still incredibly popular, and if you've still got the World of Warcraft bug, then you can play Legion on August 30th on PC and Mac. Forza Horizon 3 got announced at E3, and this time, you know, we're not in America at a music festival anymore, we're going to Australia, so that means that on top of your big roster of meaty supercars. There's about 350 cars in this one. You'll also get some brand new vehicles like 4x4s and dune buggies to really take advantage of the Australian terrain. It's being created by Playground Games, and they've said that there's going to be 4-player co-op online. It'll be a part of Xbox Play Anywhere, the brand new thing from Microsoft, so if you buy it digitally on Xbox One, you get a copy on Windows 10, and your save transfers between the two, as does your achievements, so that's pretty cool. It's coming out in September for Xbox One and PC.
That's it for this week. Take a good look at Sky News on mobile, tablet, catch up Sky Q and Snapchat for all the latest tech stories throughout the week, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.